folks, Mr. Sonnenberg here. Today we're going to be discussing ethical and social issues of genetic research. So this is for our Science 24 students. You're studying Unit 3 and this would be Topic 3. And I have to apologize ahead of time. I'm struggling with some congestion issues, so I sound a little bit nasally and having trouble talking, so bear with me through the screencast. I'll get through it quick so you don't have to suffer too much. So the first thing we need to talk about is the Human Genome Project. So basically a genome, that's all the genes found in a complete set of chromosomes. So as humans, remember we had 46 chromosomes. So all the genes found in those chromosomes, that's going to be your genome. And those chromosomes, those genes is what makes us us, and that gives us the traits, and those are the traits that were passed on. So the set of genetic instructions that makes you what you are, and that is your genome. Now what scientists have been working on is this genome project, and basically what they can do is they can map where each of the chromosomes belongs within those 46 chromosomes. So if I was to quickly draw a chromosome, or just my version of a sideways chromosome laying on the ground, I'll try to draw this. Okay, so we've got our chromosome here. Okay, it's paired up, little centromere there. And so what's going to happen is they can actually trace the gene, and they can say, okay, well, right here we know what gene that is going to be, and we can determine what trait this is going to be here, or what potential disorder might occur there and such. So that's what this Human Genome Project is talking about. So what we're going to talk about is both the pros and cons of genetic research and such. So genetic engineering we need to talk about first. It's a kind of information the Human Genome Project provides, and it has a lot of benefits to it. So basically scientists can use that knowledge and they can transfer genes from one organism to the other, and they can pass those traits on. So an example of this genetic engineering is, and this is pretty cool actually that we can do this, is we take a spider's gene and we insert it into a goat. And now what happens with that goat is the goat produces a protein identical to the protein found in spider milk, or spider silk, sorry, spider milk, jeez. But then we take that protein and it's removed from the goat's milk, and then what it does is it produces silk, and then that silk in turn is actually used in bulletproof vests that we have today. So using genetic engineering has taken traits from one species to another and inserted them, and knowing the makeup of these particular species, with that protein, you pull that from the goat's milk, and then we're producing silk. And then we're using that in bulletproof vests. So it's pretty advanced, and it has some benefits such as that. So we can look at it at that viewpoint. Now the other thing is that genetic engineering, so what are the benefits? So we're going to take this genetic engineering, we're going to talk some of the benefits, and then we're going to talk about some of the concerns, and we're going to talk about some of the questions involving those concerns. But basically if we take some of the benefits, so say somebody suspected that they were going to have a genetic disorder of some sort. So let's say they had they figured they're going to have either cystic fibrosis or breast cancer. So what they could do is they could take this genetic research and they could check the chances of developing that specific disease. So they would take a genetic counselor and they'd gather medical information, and then they'd take that from the individual family and analyze the person's chromosomes. And then from that chromosomal analysis, they would predict the chances of that particular individual in obtaining or developing, I guess, that particular disease. So benefits is, hey, I want to know in advance, what am I going to have? Is there any potential harmful disease that's going to hit me if I need to know? I wouldn't say that's like a surprise, like I need to know what's in my Christmas gift the day before Christmas or anything, but this is pretty heavy stuff if we're dealing with particular diseases that we could possibly have. But we can actually take genetic engineering, we can actually determine if you would have that in turn in advance or in the future. So some of the benefits, so we look at, well, we can identify the source of thousands of genetic disorders. So things like colourblindness, hemophilia, cystic fibrosis. So an example of this would be scientists can identify the gene that causes the disease epilepsy. So they may be able to alter that gene, and by altering that gene, that would thus cure that condition. So, which would be good. Now, developing new drugs and treatments also is a benefit, right? So, we can identify, like as an example, the DNA responsible for insulin production. So if we insert that DNA into the bacteria, well, each time the bacteria cell divide, the human insulin gene is duplicated. Now the technology produces an inexpensive supply of insulin for people who have diabetes, who can't produce their own insulin. So we can use that to develop new drugs and treatments. Now the last thing that it could benefit is helping, or another thing that could benefit is helping people make lifestyle choices. So if we study the family genes and we know what we're susceptible or what we should try to avoid and which diseases that could be within our genetic makeup, then what we can do is we can, like, so here for me example, my family has a history of heart disease, especially on the Sonnenberg side. Majority of the families had heart attacks. I'm talking great uncles and my grandfather, my dad's cousin, and some of them had multiple heart attacks. And a lot of it is that maybe it's lifestyle and stuff, but this could be genetic as well. So, if we had an example of heart disease, it might take special care of yourself, knowing that heart disease runs in your family. So you might have a low-fat diet and you exercise regularly. And I try to do that as well myself because I've seen the trends. But if I actually knew, yes, this is genetic, and you could have heart disease in the future, and you're at risk of a heart attack, then I would take extra special care. Even though I know I should anyways, I could take extra special care at that time. So now we've talked about the benefits, some of those benefits. Well, let's talk about some of the concerns of genetic research. Okay, and so we have some problems. We have some ethical questions that we need to answer. Now, ethical meaning some questions: is this right? Is it okay to do? Right. So the first question is: who should be allowed to know or have access to our genetic information? Do you want somebody to know that you potentially could have a disease down the road? Do you want to know that? And do you want other people to know your genetic information? Should a person be allowed to make decisions about another person based on their genetic information? And we'll talk about some of these questions in the next slide. So these are the ethical questions. They consider what is right or wrong, or right and wrong. So let's look at some of these questions. So, who has the right to genetic data that provide information about chances of developing various conditions? Who has that right to do that? So now, that's an ethical question. Who has the right? Are we right or are we wrong? Should people know about our genetic information? Number two, what happens if a health insurance company has access to genetic makeup? So, say for example, they know that I'm at risk, and I have insurance and I have life insurance and things like that. Now, if anything happens to me, the insurance company is going to kick in and they're going to support my family and help out because I have this insurance. But now, what if they know that, well, he has a severe gene disorder and he's going to develop a disease of some sort, and now we don't want to insure him because, well, we know that something's going to happen. So we're going to refuse insurance. What happens if that's the case, right? If insurance companies, and now who supports my family if something happens to me, right? Then three, what might happen if an employer found out about an employee had genes that often result in substance abuse? So say you were born with an addiction, that gene, okay, and you were born with that, and you're susceptible to substance abuse. So would you be fired because, well, you're probably going to have substance abuse at some time? Your genes say it, and we did some genetic research, and it says that that's what you're going to have. Which goes back to the first question: who has the right to know your information? So basically, if I get fired because, well, one day, like I know you have substance abuse, the gene for substance abuse, well, I don't think I want you working for me just in case this is the case, right? So not exactly, so definitely a concern, and those are questions you have to consider though. And then the last question we talk about is, do you want to know genetic information that may tell you a terrible disease you might have? So do you want to know that maybe there's an uncurable disease within your body that you will get at some point? Or do you just want to live your life and not think about those things? Because what would it feel like if you had that particular disease and all of a sudden you knew it, and you knew that, hey, my time's limited on this earth? It might cause some problems. So would that affect the way you live? Okay, maybe you dive into a depression of some sort, or adopt behaviors that would put you more at risk, right? Things that might put you over the edge. And those are things to consider. So those are some of the concerns. So we've looked at the concerns, we looked at the benefits. Now, you should be able to now, I guess, see the advances in genetic research and see what we're doing out there with these genes. And it's amazing what they can do with this gene research. But the real question we want you to know is, do the benefits outweigh the concerns? And how our society is developing and thinking. So benefits, do they outweigh the concerns? So with current society and stuff, that's a question for you to ask, right? And that's an opinionated thing, because there are pros and there are cons, and we have entitled to our opinion on how we feel about this situation. But do you think the benefits outweigh the concerns? Anyways, guys, hopefully this has helped. This is ethical and social issues on genetic research, and hopefully you found this interesting. And so remember, you can play, pause, rewind these screencasts, use them to answer your post-assessment questions on your link to your unit, not checklist, but unit outline. And I guess hopefully this is helpful. But appreciate you tuning in, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.